I'm Patricia, and this is Investigating Vegan Life with Patricia Kathleen. This series features interviews and conversations I conduct with experts from food and fashion to tech and agriculture, from medicine and science to health and humanitarian arenas. Our inquiry is an effort to examine the variety of industries and lifestyle tenets in the world of vegan life. To that end, we will cover topics that have revealed themselves as common and integral when exploring veganism. The dialogue captured here is part of our ongoing effort to host transparent and honest rhetoric for those of you who, like myself, find great value in hearing the expertise and opinions of individuals who have dedicated their work and lives to their ideals. You can find information about myself and my podcast at patriciakathleen.com. Welcome to Investigating Vegan Life. Now let's start the conversation. Hi everyone, and welcome back. I am your host, Patricia, and today I am ecstatic to be sitting down with Dr. Joel Fuhrman. Dr. Fuhrman is a family physician and a New York Times bestselling author 7 times over. You can find out more about everything we talk about, as well as all of Dr. Fuhrman's work, on his website, www.drfuhrman.com. That is drfuhrman.com. Welcome, Dr. Fuhrman.
Thank you. Excited to be here and talk to you.
I'm excited too as well. It's a hard road because of your prolific work history, but I'm going to endeavor to both introduce anybody who hasn't had the splendid opportunity to look at your work and some of the different areas of your career, as well as kind of get into more areas that I feel haven't been explored recently with you for those of you that are avid fans. For everyone listening, I will offer a brief bio on Dr. Fuhrman before I begin peppering him with questions. But prior to that, a roadmap for today's podcast, just so that you can follow along and see where our trajectory of inquiry is going. We will first look at Dr. Fuhrman's personal history as it pertains to his wealth of knowledge in whole plant food-based vegan diet and how some of those key terms pertain to him. And then we will look at unpacking key terms that he has used throughout his career, such as nutritarian diet and things of that nature. I will look at things like G-bombs and other things that a lot of you are familiar with and kind of flesh out some of the areas that he has come to have kind of included in his arsenal of biblical proportion. I will also look at his Eat to Live retreat based out of San Diego, California. And then I will look at unpacking a few of his most recent books to kind of garner a sense of where he is headed, as well as look back on a few that have current latter day incredible significance with the COVID pandemic. I will also include rapid fire questions that a lot of our audience has written in that we are asking us to ask Dr. Fuhrman. And then we'll wrap everything up with advice. But before we get to that, a short bio as promised. Joel Fuhrman, MD, is a board-certified family physician, 7-time New York Times best-selling author, and internationally recognized expert on nutrition and natural healing. In addition to his medical practice in New Jersey, Dr. Fuhrman operates the Eat to Live retreat in San Diego. He is the president of the Nutritional Research Foundation and is on the faculty of Northern Arizona University Health Sciences Division. Dr. Fuhrman's 5 PBS specials have raised more than $50 million for public broadcasting. And Dr. Fuhrman, I know that is a very condensed, boiled down, and maybe even a little outdated bio, which I can allow you to correct right now before we jump into your background.
No, we can. I don't have to add stuff.
You've got it all. Okay.
Okay, it's good enough.
I'm curious, can you, for anyone who hasn't read any of your literature or know anything about your background, can you kind of describe post-medical school, your entrance into the way and your empire is right now, the plant-based environment that you came to develop and understand it, your own personal story?
Well, to understand my personal story, I was a world-class figure skater. I was 3rd in the world in pair skating with my younger sister in the early 1970s. When I was after we got hurt I was on crutches for a while. I missed the 76 Olympics because of an injury. I went into my family's business and I decided after working a few years that my real passion was nutrition and natural healing. So I decided to then go back as an adult at the age of 28. I went back to get the postgraduate pre-medical courses at Columbia because I had graduated from college in 1973. I graduated in 74 as as a business, as kind of a business major and political science major. And in
Mhm.
other words, so I didn't have the courses to go to medical school. I had to go back to school again to get the specific medical requirements to go back to medical school at the age of 30 to pursue my passion, which was a medical career based on nutritional science. So I wasn't a conventional physician and then decided to adopt this way of thinking and living. I first adopted this way of thinking and living and and realized its incredible impact it would have on people's ability to reverse disease and get well and recover their health. And I pursued to get an education, a medical degree, to pursue that dream and passion of mine. So I've been in practice now for more than 3 decades, and um, I've got tremendous self-satisfaction and personal reward from being able to take people who are very sickly from what are considered chronic irreversible conditions, everything from asthma, fibromyalgia, migraines, lupus, psoriasis, heart disease, diabetes, and give people the type of information and dietary and nutritional protocols so they can enable complete recoveries and get well again. So I developed my scientific and nutritional niche to design diet styles to maximize human longevity and and tell people that we can win the war on cancer right now. We don't have to have cancer. We don't have to have heart disease. We don't have to get demented. And we can live a long life to between 95 and 105 years old. We can push the envelope of human longevity close to 100 years old for the vast majority of people without getting physical and mental frailty and disability. That said, so my niche has been to describe to people what's ideal, not to water it down, to make it more acceptable to the masses and more people would like it. My niche was designed for those people who want to know what's best so they can live the longest and use what's best therapeutically as a therapeutic modality to reverse disease. With that being said, we've found over the years that doing what's best can be made to be delicious and can be something you enjoy doing and give you tremendous emotional satisfaction with eating. And it becomes, there's no extra enjoyment or living experience that you miss when you eat such a healthy diet. So I kind of just try to dispel the myth that, oh, I'd rather shoot myself and die right now. I'd rather be dead than have to eat that way because I want to enjoy my life more and eat whatever I want. And that's just not true. The more you eat, high sugar and highly sweetened and fried foods and more heavily seasoned foods, salted foods, the more it deadens your taste buds. I mean, you get in better health, you enhance your taste, and our dietary and recipe repertoire is fantastic. So we actually can show people you can have incredibly gourmet tasting food and still not have to worry about getting diseases that afflict other Americans.
Yeah, I find when I speak to vegan athletes, you coming from this figure skating background and then going to medical school to prove theories that you had already built yourself is unique beyond comparison. However, I'm wondering, well, with that, I find when I speak to vegan athletes that they have a relationship about healing natural or let's say more common ailments, muscles that have been stretched too hard or worked too profoundly. This relationship with food being a fuel and things like that that is beyond what a lot of even chefs that get into plant-based things have. Do you feel like that was the beginning of when you were a figure skater? Do you feel like your relationship with your food and what it was doing to this extreme sport, that was the impetus for you beginning your query?
Probably not.
Okay.
I
It was
don't.
after that.
Well, it was parallel to that. It was more the observation of what nutrition can do. I mean, I was involved. My father was overweight and sickly, and I was involved I learned through the natural hygiene movement and seeing people that were seriously ill recover their health through that form of nutrition. And then so I learned about that. And of subsequent years, obviously, I refined and took away the myths and see the problems with some of their tenets, but nevertheless, it was seeing the early people in the field of nutrition being able to get people well again from serious illnesses and how powerful it was. and how it never made sense to me that taking drugs, which are poisonous and are carcinogenic, that putting more drugs in people to give them the ability to continue to hurt themselves with a toxic and diet that was nutritionally deficient is going to be the way you get good health. You can't get good health by access to more medical care. Because medical care means more drugs, which are poisonous and don't take away the cause. It just inherently made sense to me when I did the reading of these early pioneers in the history of the nutritional and health movement. The reading by the pioneers made more sense than the reading by where conventional people were thinking. And I kind of put it together and then developed my own way of my own, formulas and my own dietary portfolios to even make it more efficacious.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you can kind of unpack when the nutritarian diet, first of all, if you would be so kind as to kind of briefly describe or define what that means to you and what you would like your audience to know about it. And then also tell us about when it was born in your head.
Well, the word nutritarian, it defines a diet style that's designed to be nutrient rich and also contain all the nutrients humans need to maximize their health. It's another word for a super healthy diet. The word nutritarian means nutrient rich, super healthy, designed for human longevity and human health. There's no other word that encompasses that. A vegan diet doesn't make it healthy that it's a vegan. It doesn't even make it healthy if it's whole food vegan. Whole food plant-based doesn't even make it healthy. And a diet doesn't even have to be 100% plant-based to be nutritarian. So I think the meaning of the word nutritarian means we're doing all the right elements so that they're most critically important. For example, eating a diet that's rich in green vegetables. Whether you eat a little bit of animal products or you're a vegan, if your diet is not rich in green vegetables, it's impossible to be healthy. The human body's immune system is dependent, and the ability to fight cancer and the NRF2 transcription proteins and the ability of cells to repair and heal itself is all dependent on our exposure to certain foods like onions, green vegetables, and mushrooms. Without exposure to those foods, you can't have superior health. What I'm saying right now is that the blue zones around the world identify populations that might live healthier and longer than Americans, but they're not ideal. They usually encompass one or two ideal factors accounting for their benefits of longevity. But if we isolate all the science involved and all the studies, the thousands and thousands of studies we have available today, we can do much better than the blue zones can do. And a nutritarian diet, in that word, ascribes putting a diet style together with a full portfolio of benefits that a dietary excellence can afford people, and let them understand the science that supports it. So they can choose to do it, yes or no, but at least they know that you have a pinnacle of nutritional excellence here with a tremendous amount of irrefutable science that's supporting it. And of course, we're talking here about a diet that's, one, nutrient rich, has a high nutrient bang per caloric buck. Number two, it's hormonally favorable. That means we're not eating foods that are high glycemic or too much animal protein that could raise IGF-1 or other acids in the body or other things that could promote death. And obviously, we're avoiding toxins and other things that are potentially damaging, like chemicals. And of course, and number four, of course, we're trying to be nutritionally complete and not miss any nutritional element that could benefit or extend human lifespan, to include in a diet that's largely plant-based or plant predominant. I don't use that word plant-based much because the word based means more than 50%. And with scientists around the world, it has all different meanings. If you're taking a math-based course, then it's like 50, 60% math, and it's not definitive enough. Some people use plant-based to mean vegan, and others think it means a plant-based to means the American diet is already 70% of calories from plants and 30% from animal products. So it's too vague. And I think so. I'm trying to be more specific, and we're talking here about it. In any case, I'm also using the conservative use of certain supplementation to make sure, like as you approach a vegan diet, your diet may not have ideal levels of B12. It may not have ideal levels of DHA. It may not have ideal levels of zinc. It may not have ideal levels of iodine or K2. So we're trying to be very cautious and conservative to make sure we're not giving a person a certain diet that could be causing them a problem later on in life due to long-term nutritional deficiencies. So I'm just being cognizant of all the potential downfalls of traditional vegan advocates.
Yeah, and we've actually had a large part of, some of the interesting rhetoric that's been brought up across industries in this podcast series, which is based on looking at all of vegan life. So not just the diet and health, or the food that people normally attach to it, but all of it, the sustainability, the responsibility, all of those things. And one of the biggest feuds right now is plant-based versus vegan and what those two terms mean. And interestingly, my international guests that have come on and spoken to us really feel that the plant-based term is being adopted criminally by marketing industries and no longer means anything attached to health, but that it's trying to being fortified with vitamin D was in the 80s and 90s, and all of these things. So it's good that you clarified that for everyone listening. I'm wondering, a lot of your works, your books, anybody who's familiar with you, even when you give your talks, you have a very your main point is utility. So you have this incredible scientific work that's constantly evolving, that you're keeping up to date, that you're educating people about, but then you also provide platforms. And it's kind of your life's work to be able to have people take this information that's backed by studies and things being done and then put it into utility. And you do that a lot with acronyms and little tidbits that people can kind of latch onto and remember. And one of my favorites is G-BOMBS. And I was hoping that if you could tell us what that acronym is and why it's a kind of this paramount piece of your platform.
Absolutely. And I do think it's a paramount piece because I was sitting there, thinking about what are the 5 or 6 most important foods that people need to include in their diet on a regular basis, or category of foods that have the most scientific documentation to show protection against cancer, putting together this anti-cancer lifestyle. And G-BOMBS, it didn't originally start without an acronym. It was some other different acronym first. It migrated to G-BOMBS. It just felt better. But it stands for, obviously, G, then BOMBS, BOMBS, stands for greens and beans and onions and mushrooms and berries and seeds. And because there's so much data, so much scientific data, we could throw a dart at any of those foods like seeds and say, well, here's the data on seeds. That when people, for example, a study following women with breast cancer for 10 years showed a 71% decreased risk of breast cancer-related deaths for women who had just 1/3 of a milligram of lignin from seed in their diet, from seeds like flax seeds or chia seeds or sesame seeds. And by the way, a teaspoon of ground flax seeds has 7 milligrams. That was for women who only had 1/3 of a milligram of lignin, and may reduce the risk of death by 71%. We're saying here that that's just one study. I'll list 30 studies on that issue and showing that we come to a position of authority not from looking at one study, but looking at numerous studies that are not only controlled trials, but also the long-term epidemiologic studies, also the studies with large numbers of people, looking at hard endpoints like death. We have certain studies long-term studies have to corroborate the short-term studies before you come to a more definitive opinion about something. But the point I'm making right now is that each one of these food categories individually show dramatic protection against cancer and even enhancing lifespan, even once you have cancer, preventing recurrence of cancer and enhancing lifespan for people who have cancer. When we put together a dietary portfolio that includes these full categories, then we've reached a program that's much more protective than even any of the blue zones would be, to include all of those foods in your regular daily food intake. That means having a big salad every day with something raw cruciferous on top. And maybe the dressing, instead of made from oil and vinegar, it's made from blended nuts or seeds and vinegar and some tomato sauce or oranges, or we're designing the recipes to go in conjunction with maximizing your nutritional absorption and content of the meal, with maybe a bowl of vegetable bean soup and a piece of fruit for dessert. So what I'm saying is, whether you're looking at berries or onions or scallions, or whether you're looking at green vegetables, these foods are critically important, and I should say even necessary for to have excellent immune function. The minute you remove one major food category, you're not going to have the most optimal immune function and protection you could have. So in other words, if you took the green vegetables out of the diet, you couldn't have a healthy diet without green vegetables in it. I always make the joke. I say, if you don't like green vegetables, you better live close to a hospital. Not that that's going to help you, but the point is, green vegetables are the food that are linked most closely with maximizing human longevity. One study with more than 130,000 people divided green vegetable intake into 5 different quintiles, and the ones with the highest quintile of green vegetable intake are the 130,000 people are the ones who really had the longest lifespans by far, not even close. But so the point I'm making is that it's very useful. As you said, it's very important for people to be able to just access that, to know that, did I have some beans today? Have some greens, some onion or mushroom in my salad or my soup? Did I have some berries? Did I have some seeds or nuts today? Did I have some, try to get your full dietary portfolio in. So that's one of my acronyms I've been using for years.
Yeah, I like it. And I think it's key. I also think introducing concepts that can seem daunting and breaking them down to serve as much utility as your recipes and things like that. You talk a lot about phytonutrients, and that can be an area that I think that for a layperson it can be a little daunting or confusing, especially when it's kind of thrown around in different ways in the medical community, in the diet community, and sometimes those are nowhere near the same universe, which we can get into. But you have common threads again, and so your most recent book, Eat for Life. Another one I want to get into briefly is super immunity, and that is pretty self-evident for those of you who've read it. And then there's Eat to Live, and one of my favorites we talked about before we started recording was fast food genocide, how processed food is killing us and what we can do about it. I think both of those, they all go hand in hand. They all talk about how phytonutrients or the lack thereof are relating back to this idea of cancer, disease, and how a lot of those things, particularly you have a lot of rhetoric about type 2 diabetes, how it doesn't need to, exist. It's about eating your way into health and fighting disease simultaneously, which I think always go hand in hand. But I wanted to ask you really quickly, that was a mouthful. Let's get into super immunity and anyone who's read it and remembers it or has reread it recently, you very, I don't know if it was ominous or what it was, but you kind of predicted in the beginning of that book, what you did was you discussed the future potential of a pandemic due to a weakened immune system from a lack of phytonutrients coupled with, a mutating viruses around the world. But this was back in 2013. And you're having this constant conversation about the weakening of the immune system due to the American diet and also these transforming. So my question for you right now, just out the gate, is when COVID-19 set in, I can't imagine that you were shocked, but what was your initial stance on realizing that was happening and you'd written this book 7 years ago?
Well, my initial stance was that everybody's panicking. And you know what? Why didn't they panic years ago? Or why doesn't this fear of cancer make them panic and want it? Because they're eating great cancer, and 75% of our population over the age of 70 dies of heart attacks anyway. Why aren't they worried about that? Why don't you eat? But here we have something thrown right in their face that can kill them right away. So my point, of course, is I understand that this is it can result in a person with weakened immunity and a person eating a standard diet die right away. But so my initial thought was, this message has to get out. People have to know. They don't have to be a number or a statistic. They don't have to be intubated in a hospital on a heart-lung machine. They don't have to have this happen to them. They could immediately start to eat properly to support normal immune function and make COVID-19 a harmless experience. This is a relatively harmless virus to a healthy person. And even young people are unhealthy, and even though it hits mostly the elderly and sickly anyway, we still have the majority of people in America have ubiquitously, people are nutritionally deficient and immunosuppressed. We have a complete immunosuppressed population that's putting themselves at risk of having a simple coronavirus possibly kill them, which is utterly insane. They should be eating normally, so they have a normal immune response, and then COVID that has no effect on a person and hardly even makes them sick. This is so ridiculous that people don't embrace nutritional excellence and stop this needless fear.
Absolutely. I want to switch gears really quickly and look at your Eat to Live retreat. And I'm based out of San Diego, and I was telling you before we started today that you're very famous in these parts, as is the retreat. People who don't know even a lot about the literature behind it and things like that know of the retreat because of its rumored beauty, and people who have come back really changed. And I was hoping you can kind of unpack what it is, because you don't have, it's not just a one kind of moment, a retreat based on X amount of time. There's a variation of different cycles or systems that you've had running through there. And I was hoping you could kind of touch on a few. And prior to obviously the pandemic, I was hoping you could kind of describe the retreat and what it was originally built for and some of the systems happening within it.
Yes, and we're still in operation, obviously, right now. But in any case, I have to say that even early in my career in Flemington, New Jersey, with my medical practice, I used to rent a 10-bedroom house in the center of town, so people were coming in from different parts of the country could stay with me and go and do some of my nutritional protocols, staying with me, 2 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it is they stayed there, so I could be in charge of their care as I put them on special diets to reverse disease. Then as I carried on my next career for the next 20 years, I always had in the back of my mind that, some people are such food addicts and their conditions are so serious that they really need to have a safe place where they can have have forced abstinence from their addictive food triggers, and they can be taught shown how to make the food taste great, how they can retrain their taste buds to prefer this way of eating, get skilled in living this way for themselves, and then set home without those addictions and desires to eat junk food. And just like with cocaine addiction, you can't go away to a health retreat for a week or two of eating healthy, drop 10 or 15 pounds, and expect to go home and to be able to do it easily for the rest of your life, especially some of these treats feeding you sprouts and nothing that tastes good. You're not going to live that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was always my dream to have a place where people in need could come under my care. And it's working out that way because people come with rheumatoid arthritis or psoriasis or lupus or asthma or diabetes or out of control high blood pressure that can't be controlled with medications, and they stay here under my care. And with such an excellent diet, the way our chefs make it taste great, we grow most of the food in our own incredible soil, and we have 100 exotic fruit trees, whatever it is. The point is, we feed them most incredibly delicious food, and they see their blood pressure come down, and I'm able to wean them off their medications safely and gradually get them off their narcotics, their immunosuppressive drugs, their blood pressure drugs, their diabetic drugs, and whatever it is to have them achieve this degree of nutritional excellence that then leads to a miraculous health transformation, and them to glean the skills that they can do this on their own when they leave and love doing it this way and not think of living any other way now that they've learned it and gotten such benefits. In other words, it takes time for some people to be able to grasp this and apply this so it really can work in their life, especially if they're in a serious condition. Some people can read a book, watch a video, come to some of these podcasts. They can do it great. They can follow the recipes. They can change their life. And thousands of people have done that. And the vast majority of people are going to do this on their own. But I want to be able to reach those people, even those who don't seem to be able to get their act together to do this on their own and need that extra care and hand-holding at the beginning. They can come into my retreat and we can help them get started up. And most people, it's designed for people to stay 2 to 3 months. It's not like a hotel or one of these places come for a weekend. It's set up for you're actually coming into a rental property where you're renting a room for 2 or 3 months to live in this environment. You know what I mean? So those people are staying here a long time because that's what it takes really to have these miraculous health transformations take place. You just can't do it in a week or two. So I've designed it for the people who want to put in that long-term time here and make a complete health recovery. And that could be somebody that's obese. With my average person is just a person who's significantly overweight and can't control their eating habits. And once they're here for a long time, they don't just lose 50 pounds or more, they learn how to control their eating habits, and they get not just rid of the physical addiction, but they get the training emotionally and psychological counseling to know all the factors that have caused them to develop those problems with food and food behavior that can really set their life now on a better direction and a completely different destiny.
Yeah, and that's another core tenet of most of the work that I've read recently of yours. And I really appreciate, I think that it can't be said enough, and I don't think it's digested as quickly as it ought to be, that food, your link between food and addiction and poor food choices and fast food being these addictive agents that are exactly like, illicit drugs and things like that, and requiring the same amount of time to recode the body's biology and teach it to do what it ought to do. And the parallel that you run, like even with the taste buds, where you talk about like we have to strip things away and so that we can start tasting things as they ought to have been, and then no longer wanting the other things. I think it's a really key issue that everyone who is looking towards health kind of overlooks. We have been, I would argue, since the 70s trying to get out of jail free card and make things faster and easier and better. And I don't think that the human body was built that way. And I'm wondering if you have so everyone who wrote into us asking you, there were a lot of requests for, your top 3, your quick fix, this and that. And though your tenant is about this kind of, you need to give it the time, this 12 weeks, the basis of your retreat. However, to that end, I do want to ask you about when you sit down with someone, do you have a top 3 things that you start to kind of break people into at least looking at having another conversation with themselves about how they're eating, what their relationship with their diet is? Do you have those kinds of icebreaker questions that you propose to future clients or anybody at large?
You understand that most of my career has been taking care of people who have significant medical conditions or significantly overweight, diabetes, heart disease, lupus, psoriasis. They're generally people who are coming to me to get well, and they want to have the answers how to get well. And I sit across the table from them and I said, do you really want to, do this, with baby steps and get a little better? Or do you really want to jump in with both feet, do it all the way and get rid of your psoriasis completely, get off your medications completely, become non-diabetic, get off your blood pressure medications? Do you want to be totally well? You just want to trick yourself, because what happens is when you do the baby step approach and you have one foot in both worlds, you still constantly crave those things you're allowing yourself to have a little bit of, number one. And number 2, you don't get such great results either, because you have a little bit of oil in your diet or a little bit of fried food, and it halts lipolysis like a stone. You stop losing weight. You want to drop 20 pounds the first month and 15 pounds the second month, or you want to piddle around with 2 pounds a month, doing it 95 or 90%. And inevitably the person says, no, I'm here, I'm here to see you, and I want you to tell me exactly what to do. And I'll say, great, that's what I want to hear, because I'll tell you something. Because you got where you are today because of what you chose to eat, what you feel like eating, what you like to eat, what you think you should eat, what you learned you should eat, what you think is best for you to eat. And you should get rid of all that stuff right now and not even think anymore, or decide what you want to eat or like to eat, and let me make all those decisions for you, and eat just what I tell you to eat, and don't even think about whether you like it or not. Just do it. And let's see what kind of results you get. And let's see what happens in a few weeks, how much weight you lose, how much happens to your blood pressure, what happens to your diabetes, how much your pain goes down, how much your asthma improves. Let me prove to you that this can completely change your thinking about health and about food. And then I will also prove to you, if you give me the time, that you will like eating this way, the flavor and the taste, just as much or more as your old diet, if you'll grant me the time, those periods of a few months, to be in that area where you're not sure which you like better. And you'll be missing some of those old foods and you'll be desirous of them. But if you do this, those will lessen with time. You'll desire them less and less. And soon your taste buds will change and you'll start to be craving the foods that I'm feeding you right now. So, forget about what you think you like or put yourself under that stress. Just do what's right now to get totally well. And we'll worry about that other stuff later. Do this whether you like it or not right now. And inevitably, I show them how it can taste great right at the beginning. In the first week, I'm giving them incredible tasting stuff. But I take away that ability, I take away that idea that they should be trying to choose whether this is going to the way they're going to if they're going to like it as much. Assume you're not going to like it as much at the beginning, and just do it and get some, just feel better, and you'll see what'll happen with time. That's usually what I do. But there's no one formula, because different people have different needs, and it's an art to do what's best for each person, because sometimes if I'm too hard with a person, it could turn them off. And sometimes if you're too soft with a person, that's not going to be the right way either. You have to really know the best way to handle each particular individual. Most people do better because of the addictive nature of processed foods. Most people do better when you're very clear at the boundaries and you have them jump in with both feet and do everything right at the very beginning. Not everybody, but most people do better that way.
Okay, so I want to kind of get into that just briefly as a tangent. When I was looking into the retreat and how it's structured, and I couldn't help but notice, first of all, because your own rhetoric, akins poor diet to addiction and things like that. The structure is a great deal, both like for me, the Marine Corps in the removal of one's personal autonomy in order to build up this stronger engine of faith and things like that with graduation, and also Alcoholics Anonymous rhetoric about giving this power up to like a greater good and giving their sobriety a chance. And I'm wondering, I don't think that you based it off of either of those, but how did you develop the model that you came up with at the retreat? Was it just out of your own research yielding what would and would not work for these very, very sick clients, or how was it developed?
Yes, because people are coming here and they want to make sure they're in a safe environment and not tempted by things that they're, like say we're giving a delicious dessert. They know that that dessert, for example, only has one medjool date as a sweetener. It's not has 5 dates per serving. It has a maximum of 1 date per sweetening. It's not quite as sweet as a conventional dessert. But after a week of eating those desserts, they don't want sweeter. Their taste buds have acclimated to it and they love it. But the point I'm making, they're in a safe environment. They're here for a long time. What they want most of all is results. They're not going to spend this amount of time and money and not make sure they get rid of their blood pressure problems and get rid of their diabetes, whatever it is, and lose the weight. They got to have results, but they don't want to be in discomfort with hunger. They want to still enjoy what they're eating. They want to still have the right type of supportive services, the cooking classes. They want to leave here making sure they know how to make the food taste great when they go home. So they can not only continue the weight loss, but they continue to have these incredible meals that are so delicious that that they're raving over. I have 3 gourmet chefs that are doing cooking classes too. And so they're learning skills while they're here. They're learning gardening skills and cooking skills, and they're learning exercise skills, but they're also learning tremendous amount of skills, psychological skills, mindfulness skills, skills about their personalities. They might come here angry and in a food
Mm.
addiction mentality. And the more you're an addict, the more you're less of a human with your full creativity and capabilities intact. The more addicted you are, the more your primitive brain is driving your behavior. So you no longer can really solve the problems in your life and really do the things you can accomplish. And you're not going to be as caring or or giving to others or appreciative of the outside world when you're narrowly focusing when your addictions are controlling your behaviors. So they learn so much about the nature of addiction, how it's emotionally destroying their life, and how those foods have kept them in a prison, and how we're not putting them in a prison, we're setting them free. And now they have control to eat everything they want in the framework of good health, but they choose to eat these foods now. We choose to eat these foods because we enjoy eating them more, because we feel good and they maintain our great health and they taste great. So we have emotional and psychological satisfaction from eating this way, in addition to it being good for us at the same time. So the learning process in which they're here, they come out of here, I have to say, happier, better adjusted, and without their, and also with more, with more satisfaction about who they are as a person. And they really feel good about themselves. So I think they're not just coming here for a diet boot camp. They're also a tremendous amount of an educational process that occurs while they're here.
Yeah, and you mentioned within that, you talked about your perception of hunger, and I'm kind of obsessed with some of your rhetoric about this, and I'm hoping that you can expand on it. You talk about the changing relationship with hunger and the perception of hunger changing as one starts to live with G bombs ruling their course and guiding their ships of health and diet. And I'm wondering if you can kind of expand on that and what you mean by that, because I think one's relationship with hunger is at the root of every poor choice in health, and diet that happens. And so can you kind of explain what you mean when you say that and how it changes?
Well, thank you for that. And I think that's one of the legacies I've left for the scientific and nutritional community is my um, explanation and science behind the true nature of hunger and toxic hunger. And I published a study called The Changing Perceptions of Hunger on a High Nutrient Density Diet. I think it was published in 2011 in the medical journal Nutrition Journal. And it's been a journal it's been an article that's been referenced by scientists all over the world, and they're discussing hunger and food addiction. So I'm very proud of that too. I'm also grateful for and proud of the fact that that hundreds of physicians across this country have modified their practices and changed the philosophy of their care by learning from my books and my practice. So I've been a mentor to many different physicians across the country. And at the core of this, I'm so glad you voiced that, is that it's so difficult for people to control the amount of calories they consume, that they become a calorie consuming monster when their diet is not nutritionally adequate. Because the more your diet is nutritionally inadequate, the more you build up metabolic waste products and toxic waste products like, like free radicals or advanced glycation end products, lipofuscin, ammonia, urea, whatever it is, you build up more waste products. The body becomes more effective at removing wastes and repairing in the non-digesting state. So the liver is busy absorbing and assimilating and storing calories and changing calories into a form in which they can be stored when you're eating and digesting. It's when digesting is finished, when the liver takes on this role of taking fat-soluble toxins and making them water-soluble so they can be excreted in the kidney. In other words, the body becomes more effective at healing and repairing in the non-feeding state, when you're not eating food. You spend more time in the non-eating state, you live longer. But what I'm saying right now is that when your body is toxic and you're not eating a healthy diet, you can't tolerate the way you feel. You feel too uncomfortable in the non-digesting and not eating phase. So you feel too weak and too fatigued and too shaky and headachy and stomach cramping and bubbling, and you just feel all kinds of uncomfortable sensations, which you mistakenly think are hunger because eating makes them go away again. And what I'm saying, right, you're forced to overconsume calories just to feel comfortable. And people mistake feeling fatigued. They think fatigue gives them the need for calories. They have to eat to keep their energy up. They got to eat so they can go exercise. They got to eat so they can go to the gym. They got to eat to do everything. It's always eating. And they don't recognize that they're feeling that way because they're not eating. Their quality of their diet is not good enough. And they built up too much waste products in their tissues. And that's why they feel so sickly or ill. And they think it's hunger, because once you adopt a diet that's more in mesh with what the human's needs are, that's a diet that's not going to create disease, then those symptoms gradually fade away and a new perception of hunger takes its place, which is felt in the neck and the throat, or the neck and the upper chest, not in the head or the stomach. So you start to feel hunger as a drawing sensation in your throat and upper chest. And that's where true hunger lies. And when true hunger directs your desire to eat, then you're instinctually in touch with the right amount of calories, matter of fact, the precise amount to maintain lean body mass, because I'm claiming that real hunger does not exist to store fat on the body and will never have you eat to maintain fat mass. It's only there to maintain musculoskeletal mass. It's not there to maintain fat. In order to become overweight, you had to have eaten outside of the demands of true hunger, eaten recreationally, or eaten because of responding to toxic hunger. So removing toxic hunger, it makes it potentially possible for people to comfortably eat the right amount of calories. And until you do that, it makes it almost impossible for people to lose weight and keep it off for the rest of their life.
Yeah, and you mentioned in Fast Food Genocide as well, I think it was, that fast food and foods like that directly disable the body's, ability to even understand hunger anymore, and replace it with something completely different, which is so powerful when you view it that way. Everyone says fast food is bad, but I think that book does a really good job at painting it for the true Stalin that it is. It's a great thing. I'm wondering, when you get into conversations about it, this kind of reaches out to, we had an inquiry about oil and salt. And this is an area that a lot of health advocates and people get really diversified on. And you're very clear with it, like you are with all of your theories. You don't have this wiggle room, this gray area, which is nice because it's very concise and easy to understand what you're doing and what you're talking about, where you're coming from. But can you enumerate for everyone listening why your take on oils, and I mean actually expressed oils and not healthy fats here, like avocado or something, but the actual oils, being all of them, why you strictly eliminate them, as well as salt, and how that kind of plays into common perception as to what your advice is?
Certainly. I think probably the biggest scam ever perpetrated on the world's population is convincing them that oil is a health food. It's been almost amazing that people would accept that as a truth.
Yeah.
I don't think this is controversial in the sense that if we look among the nutritional science community, my peers who publish nutritional research, and go to a conference or a meeting among scientific peers that produce nutritional research, I don't think anybody would argue that walnut oil is healthier than a walnut, or that avocado oil is healthier than an olive, or that sesame oil is healthier or as healthy as sesame seeds, or flaxseed oil is as good as the whole flaxseed. I think that universally, you're going to find all scientists will have no choice but to agree that the whole food is healthier than a processed food made from that food. In other words, when you eat the whole seed, like a flaxseed or a sesame seed, you're getting literally hundreds of beneficial compounds that are removed when you take the oil, but you're also getting the calories absorbed into the bloodstream, 1 or 2 calories a minute. You're absorbing the calories over hours, so the body can preferentially burn it for energy as opposed to storing it as fat. When you take the sesame oil, the 120 calories a tablespoon are absorbed within 5 minutes. And the body can't burn 120 calories of fat over the next 20 minutes. It's going to have to store it as fat on the body. So it's going to rev up fat storage, and it's going to halt lipolysis or halt the breakdown of fat. When you take an oil, it sets up a biochemical milieu in the body to prevent the loss of fat from the body, because you're telling the body to store fat. Oil is such an unnatural and source of concentrated calories that the rush of calories into the bloodstream so rapidly also signal dopamine centers in the brain that signal the addictive center of behavior in the same spot that nicotine or opiates or narcotics do, or cocaine does. So oil is an addictive substance. It's an appetite stimulant, and it's extremely fattening. Now, people could believe that oil is a health food if they want to, if the whole population wasn't obese. But how does a person justify the use of oil when 88% of our population have a BMI above 23? In other words, you're sitting and you can work on a computer all day. Where's the excess 500 calories of oil you put on your food going to go, except to your fat stores? And fat on the body is pathologic tissue that increases risk of cancer and shortens your lifespan. There's no such thing as a healthy fat person, and you can't be lean when you're pouring oil on your food unless you're a professional athlete or physical laborer digging ditches or chopping down trees all day. Unless there's no way you're going to burn those extra 500 calories to 1,000 calories of oil you pour on your food. It's just too fattening. So there's no justification, and I have to insist, I don't even think there's a controversy. The controversy is among people who are trying to either to appeal to people, because there's all types of diets out there, and people know that there are diet books written so people buy them because they want to appeal what people want to eat. When we're talking to the scientific community, we're not talking to a bunch of people trying to sell a diet book telling the person what they want to hear. This is good, cheese is good, oil is good, honey is good, whatever, telling people what they want to hear. It's among scientists now discussing what's best, this versus that. It's not that, this versus that. Eggs might be better than donuts. So that doesn't make eggs good. When you compare eggs to beans, they don't do so well. Oil is better than sugar, and we can put up studies to show olive oil is better than butter. The Prevamid study actually did that. They showed that when people given olive oil to take home with them and to use instead of butter and other sources of fat, like animal fat, their risk of heart attack went down by 15%. But when the scientists took the oil away from them and told them to eat more nuts and seeds, then their heart attack rates went down by 60%. This was a European study. The point I'm making is when you compare olive oil to walnuts, then you obviously see no comparison. You always see better results. More weight loss, reversal of diabetes, more protection against cancer, and a dramatic protection against heart attacks and strokes not seen with any type of oil. So I don't really think it's controversial among people who've had a chance to review the full portfolio of research available on the subject.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I think it is one of the greatest scams that I'm hoping the olive oil industry or someone started spreading about, it being healthy for you.
Yeah, first it's olive oil, then it's coconut oil, then it's MCT oil, then it's flax oil. It's always people trying to sell some oil to you instead of recognizing that oil is still 120 calories per tablespoon. And the most critical thing for your health is to gravitate towards your ideal weight and stay there. And when you're putting oil in your food, it's going to make that so much more difficult to achieve.
Absolutely. To that end, I have a couple of questions that people have reached out, knowing that I was going to speak with you today, and I'm going to hit some of those right now to satisfy our beautiful audience. We had a few people write in kind of to the same effect of, do you prioritize personally? This is you personally, Dr. Fuhrman, at home. Do you prioritize specific kinds of nuts in your own personal diet? For instance, are almonds or macadamia, which you talk a lot about macadamia nuts in your favorite desserts with the banana and things like that. But do you prioritize some nuts above others? And is it due to taste or is it a health way out?
Yes, I do, due to health. In other words, um, I used to have recipes years ago because cashews were so much of a favorite nut in that particular recipe to make a salad dressing or a sauce. But now I take out half the cashews and put half hemp seed or walnut in place of half the cashew, usually hemp seed. I'm trying to achieve that half of my nut and seed intake comes from the higher omega-3 nuts instead of the higher omega-6 nuts. That means I still can have half my nut and seed from the high omega-6 nuts like pecans and cashews and pistachio nuts and Brazil nuts, but I'm trying the other half to come from flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds, and walnuts. So I'm trying to utilize more of that in my recipes, and it tastes just as good if I'm making a salad dressing or a Thai sauce, and I'm taking out some of the peanut or some of the cashew and putting some hemp seed instead in the recipe. It tastes almost the same. You can hardly tell the difference but there's more omega-3. What I'm saying is it's not the omega-3, omega-6 balance of your diet that determines your health. It's the omega-3, omega-6 balance of your cell membranes on your body. And when you're at a favorable weight, your body's going to burn off the extra omega-6 you consume and hold on to the omega-3 it needs, keeping a favorable omega-6, omega-3 balance as long as you're not overweight. When you're overweight, you put that alignment in off kilter almost no matter what you eat because you have so much stored omega-6 on the body's membranes. So what I'm saying is, yes, I'm not trying to go 6-to-1 or 3-to-1 or 1-to-1. I'm trying to have adequate amounts of omega-3 fatty acids. And I also take a DHA, a vegan DHA supplement as well, to have preformed DHA. But there's benefits from ALA, and there's other benefits from flax seeds and chia seeds and hemp seeds and walnuts over and above its omega-3 content. Walnuts have powerful anti-cancer effects and the ability to stabilize arrhythmias in the heart. So there's other beneficial effects besides only their omega-3 content. So I'm consciously trying to utilize some of those nuts in my daily diet.
Okay, and you mentioned the vegan DHA supplement, and we've had people write in asking if you can kind of succinctly clarify why you take that supplement and whether or not you would advise for everyone to be taking it.
Well, I have a unique experience among living physicians in caring for the vegan community over a 30-year period and caring for the natural hygiene community of people who were vegans starting in the 1940s and 1950s with like my father's contemporaries back then, and being the young doctor caring for these elders back then, and finding a lot of them and a lot of leaders in the vegan community back then developed medical problems related to omega-3 fatty acid deficiencies that led to dementia or increased the risk of Parkinson's and developing neurologic problems in later life. They lived a long time. They didn't die young, but they developed some serious issues. And I still am chronically in contact with people who were following vegan diets who then developed dementia in their late 80s or 90s and ruined the trajectory of their later life. So in having that experience, in drawing blood tests on these people and studying this with intensity and carefulness of not wanting to be advising people to go to a near vegan or vegan diet and result in some problem like that, then I developed the expertise to be able to test for it, see the studies that support it, and come to the conclusion that I think are irrefutable at this point, that an unsupplemented vegan is placing themselves at significant and needless risk of dementia if they do not either supplement with DHA or check a blood test to make sure their omega-3 index is adequate. Because some people can make enough DHA and omega-3 on their own without supplementation. We have differences in genetic ability of those conversion enzymes. And with dietary manipulation, some people can make more of it if they choose not to supplement. So I'm not saying that everybody has to supplement. I'm saying everybody should be cautious enough to take care to achieve adequate DHA adequacy on a vegan diet, lest they put themselves at needless and risk. And we have these philosophical vegans and people who will die by the sword for their viewpoints, but they put themselves and their followers at risk because they just work, they're letting their personal bias and philosophy, advise large numbers of people into dangerous practices. Instead of being cautious and conservative and a little bit humble, to realize we have to err on the side of caution and make sure that people are okay, because a vegan diet is not what people followed through the millenniums of human history, and we're not really designed to necessarily have optimal levels of all nutrients on a vegan diet. We can't assume that.
Mm-hmm. On any diet, perhaps.
Right.
I'm wondering, do you, how long have you, how is it too late? Like, I'm 43 years old. I haven't supplemented. How quickly would you suggest someone do it? And if someone is, an advanced vegan, can they start right now and still have some of the guarantee that you believe you've got by supplementing?
Well, I mean, so we go by studies predominantly. And all the studies that look at the omega-3 index with regard to brain shrinkage or the omega-3 index in regard to cognitive impairment, the studies that have done on this so far all show the same thing. That lower levels particularly below 5, lead to definitive shrinkage and cognitive impairment of the brain with aging. And as the levels get worse, below 4 and below 3, you see more definitive brain shrinkage in significant areas of the brain for memory and for, and for neurologic problems. What I'm saying right now is the studies corroborate each other. Independent studies from one researcher, different part will corroborate each other. You develop problems with low omega-3 index. Now, we don't have the data to say at what age of maintaining a level of omega-3 index of 3, let's say if you maintain the omega-3 index to age 65, and then you fixed it and got your omega-3 index to 6 at the age of 65, would that prevent you from developing dementia at age 85? Probably, but I wouldn't take a chance with that. I'd much prefer you to start it whenever you find out about this and have your omega-3 index be good your whole life. So but if at any point that you haven't done it, start to do it. If you're not demented yet, you can probably protect yourself to a degree. I do agree, though, that once you have a significant amount of dementia or Parkinson's, the brain is not or an organ that's easy to heal like the liver is. It's very hard to heal the brain, and you're not going to really reverse dementia by giving person omega-3 supplements once it's occurred there. That's why this is so important. You can't, so some of the, I've heard a doctor say, oh, well, I watch my patients, and if they start to develop problems, then I'll worry about it then. Now, so by the time the first symptom could be dementia, and by that time, there's significant shrinkage of the brain, and you're not going to grow back a new brain. That doesn't make any sense at all. So you can't wait till you develop a problem. So I'm saying I don't know when a person should start. The sooner they start, the better. But at any point, if their levels are abnormal, they should start.
Yeah. One of your mantras has been, I've heard it, you deliver it in a lot of the speeches that I've looked up online, that I really like because I think it puts onus back where it belongs. But you've said your health is your problem, not your doctor's. And it's this whole, it goes hand in hand with doctors are treating disease. They're not, promoting health. They're there to fix things, not to create platforms necessarily of it not occurring. And we had a lot of people kind of write into this kind of note, and they were looking for you to advise them as to how to inquiry with their doctors to garner a level of communication as well as understanding as to how much their doctors understood about nutrition that they themselves align themselves with. And I'm wondering if you can give up a few pieces of advice that you would offer someone to discuss with their doctors so that they can ascertain the doctor's knowledge and also communicate their own requests if they are, indeed following the Eat for Life concepts and axiomatics.
I don't agree with that way of thinking, I'm sorry to say.
Okay.
I have to say that doctors have no special expertise in even nutrition or health over and above a lawyer, a plumber, a teacher, or your postman. And let's say the doctor did know about nutrition. Should you wait till you develop a medical problem at the age of 65 and you go to your doctor with high blood pressure, diabetes, and expect him to impart his nutritional knowledge on you in a 10 or 15-minute visit? I
Yeah.
mean, what do we care what the doctor knows? Sure, the purpose should be to teach the doctor, to help the doctor. He's a person, he's a human. We care about him too. And we want him to help his health too, because he's probably overweight and sickly because he doesn't really know much about nutrition. But we don't expect him to be our teacher of health and nutritional policies, or need him to be that. We can't expect him to be that. What I'm suggesting is that nutritional science should be taught in grade school, in colleges, in high schools. It should be reading, writing, arithmetic, and nutritional science and social studies. It's the most important knowledge we have to impart in our population to people can control their life and their health span. But a doctor, it's like the American Heart Association, who tells people, yeah, you should cut your salt intake back to 1,500 milligrams after you have heart disease. Well, it's like telling you, well, you should cut back on cigarettes and maybe even quit smoking after you develop lung cancer. The whole thing is just ridiculous. And it's kind of ridiculous to expect your doctor to be, if you're into nutrition, who do you care if your doctor knows it too? Unless you care about him, you don't want his teachings because he doesn't know as much as you're going to know because he's not dedicating himself to learning this. Now,
so to that end, would you equally advise that people not necessarily take nutrition advice from their doctor? Not only not seek out that communication, but also question heavily or just not listen to advice given by nutrition? Because I know a lot of MDs that are giving nutritional advice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think a person makes an appointment to see a physician for nutritional advice. Myself excluded, of course. What I'm saying, that's been my career, but of course, I'm an unusual doctor. The vast majority of doctors, they're there to see you in a 5-minute period and to write a script for you so they can get on to the next patient. They're making their money on volume. I'm spending an hour and a half with an initial visit, but I'm actively see people coming in for a month and we're teaching them over a period of a month. But the point I'm making right now is, what do you think your doctor's going to tell you in a 5 to 10 minute visit that's going to change the way you eat for the rest of your life? He's going to motivate you. He's going to convince you. He's going to teach you. Most doctors can go for, we don't need so many doctors because, mostly what doctors do is treat numbers on blood tests with drugs to make them look normal. So you think it's okay to keep eating the diet you're on because now your numbers look better on a blood test. All they did is scam you to think you're okay because now you can keep eating the same diet. So what doctors mostly do is give people toxic and even carcinogenic substances called pharmaceutical drugs. They give them these substances to make people think they're better or doing better when they're not. So what I'm saying is we didn't have the blood pressure medications and people were forced to change the way they eat and lose the weight. If we didn't have the cholesterol lowering drugs, people would be forced to lose the weight, change what they're eating and get back in good health again. If we didn't have the diabetic medication, people would be forced to drop the 30 pounds, eat the way you're supposed to eat, get rid of your diabetes. But now they stay overweight, they stay sickly, and they just pop drugs. And then you want your doctor to be a nutritional expert. I don't think that's the answer to what ails people. I think they've got to take their health into their own hands. It's what they do in their own kitchen, in their own life. They've got to learn how to care for themselves rightly. And the goal is to stay away from doctors and medicinal substances. I don't even go to doctors. I don't even go to myself.
Yeah. I'm wondering, my final question for today is it may be a little cheeky. And so I'm not sure if I'll get an answer out of you, but I want to know, because you have this incredible voice about immunity and the immune system, and it has been, another core axiom throughout all of your literature, all of your studying, all of your proffering. And I'm wondering, I have to say, with the COVID pandemic, you spoke recently on someone else's podcast. I don't remember her name, or I would say it right now. But you talked about immunity and the COVID and your own personal story about, not knowing whether or not you had it. You had gotten off a flight. You had like a tickle in your throat. It went away the next day. I'm wondering, just personally, without any knowledge, which we don't have yet, do you think that there will be any kind of a study with this pandemic? One of the only things that we can do is kind of study groups that weren't hit as hard and why, and maybe to do something helpful from that. Do you assume, or do you suspect that the people who are living in this eat for life mentality that you have, really described to the world, that they will have a better chance of having had COVID without suffering from, terminal or hospital-like symptoms? Or do you think that there will be immunities built by this population? What do you think that any kind of future assumptions do you think that you could give us about immunity and what we're going to learn after that we find, a helpful immunization for COVID? The aftermath between immunity, eating this way that you have, and the correlations.
The way the masses think and the way the medical and health professions teach, I don't see them even taking a look at this to find the answer. I don't even think they're going to come up with the aftermath and look back and say, yes, if you ate healthy and you ate a salad every day and you got to your normal and you were achieving a normal weight and you had a low white blood cell count, all the things I teach aren't even looked at by these people in scientific authority. So I don't expect them to come up with any massive new way of looking at things and a new unique way of seeing this. I think right now we have sufficient information from the scientific literature, which I've documented, as you know, in my books and writings, that the COVID-19 virus is harmless to a healthy immune system. The ability of a virus to replicate, invade, and then escape immune system to cause that degree of damage is impossible with a healthy immune system. And we're only seeing this virus attack very sickly people. And we're seeing it attack some young people and some people who aren't overweight, who have chronic diseases, but not many. And even those people who are so-called healthy aren't really healthy. They're still eating fast food and fried food and sweets and things. And they're still, so what I'm saying to you is that we're looking at an unhealthy population. Our whole population is very unhealthy. That's why COVID is so dangerous. So yes, I'm suggesting that we're not just protecting ourselves more, we're giving ourselves a tremendous degree of security that gives us to remove that fear. And I don't think I have any possibility at all, zero possibility of being hurt by COVID. And I think most of the people that have followed my advice feel the same way, that the science is significant enough to realize that we're totally protected against hospitalization, intubation, and death from COVID because we live in such a healthy manner. And I even can monitor people when they're overweight and sickly, and I can track their penetration of phytochemicals in their tissues, their inflammatory markers, and their white blood cell activity in their body, and see how they can improve within weeks to get them to a healthier state. And I encourage people, if they're overweight, to start losing weight at least 2 to 3 pounds a week, because you improve immune function dramatically, even while you're still overweight, if you're steadily losing weight towards a healthier weight. So I'm saying right now, a nutritarian is a person eating a very healthy diet who's at their ideal weight, or they're a person eating a very healthy diet who's overweight and they're moving steadily towards their ideal weight. And in both cases, they're going to get dramatic degree of protection. Even if you are overweight, if you're following this program, because you see in a short period of time, you see things improving right away. But if you, so for example, we see people going through gastric bypass and lap band placement. They'll get rid of their diabetes within the first 2 or 3 weeks, even while they're still overweight, just because they're losing so much fat in the body. And we start to see certain metabolic and hormonal responses change while the person's dropping their body weight. So I want people who are overweight to still have some hope, to don't think that just because they're overweight that they're going to die if they get COVID. If they start eating healthfully, they start dropping their weight, they start living on these foods and these healthy foods, they can get dramatic amount of protection. And the healthier they get to a point where they have so much protection that COVID should be relatively harmless in those populations, or totally harmless in those populations.
And future issues as well, future pandemics, which are in the pipeline if we can't shift some things
right.
around.
We know that this was going to occur at some point, and we know that future ones are also going to occur. So you better start taking care of your health and not expecting doctors to care for you, to have all the answers for you, because they don't. And you can't buy good health in a bottle with pills and vaccines. The only way you can be healthy is earning it by living a healthy life.
Absolutely. And on that positive note, I'm going to say thank you so much, Dr. Fuhrman, for your time today.
My pleasure. Best of health to all of you.
Absolutely. For everyone listening, we've been speaking with Dr. Joel Fuhrman. You can find out more about everything we've been talking about all of the work that he's doing in his books on his website, www.drfuhrman.com. And until we speak again next time, thank you so much for giving me your time. And remember to eat clean, stay well, be responsible, stay in love with the world and each other, and always bet on yourself. Sláinte.